Hi, it's Jesse. I'm back again, and I have some more Bible study for you guys, okay? So, I was thinking of the ways in which God reveals himself, you know? People in the world, they have a whole lot of ideas about who God is or who he isn't, and there are some who say that we can only know him by knowing who he is not. Um, but when Jesus came around, he demonstrated who God was for us. Um, I, Jesus was the Messiah, true, okay, but he wasn't the only one who demonstrated who God was for the world. And I want to show you this because God has had a way of showing himself to the world that the world has been rejecting for eons, okay? In Luke 21, right around verse 12, Jesus goes, "But before all this, they will seize you and persecute you. They will hand you over to synagogues and put you in prison, and you will be brought before kings and governors, and all on account of my name. And so you will bear testimony to me. But make up your mind not to worry beforehand how you will defend yourselves. For I will give you words and wisdom that none of your adversaries will be able to resist or contradict. You will be betrayed even by parents, brothers and sisters, relatives and friends, and they will put some of you to death. Everyone will hate you because of me, but not a hair of your head shall perish. Stand firm, and you will win life." Okay, so basically, we see that Jesus was rejected, and he said this also. He said that you only reject him because you reject the Father. You know, he's a reflection of the Father, you know? And it's just something that the world does to people that God sends out because, you know, they see it as like a competing power. Like, there was so much destruction prophesied around the Messiah, destruction that didn't come. And, you know, part of the reason why it didn't come is because he said, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do," right? But truly, all the world systems were supposed to crash. And, um, like, you heard that whole replacement theology thing, right? Where the church replaces Israel, though it can't really be done. This is this is what Israel is like afraid of um, in affirming Jesus's identity is that they'll be replacing the world because the prophecy surrounding the Messiah. Okay, um, there's no more chosen people. You know, it's not replacement theology. It's that covenants unite, and the platform is level. You know, and part of the way that the Messiah brings us is about is by crashing all these world systems that are running the world and bringing God back in. So, you know, like Christian prophecy is that when Jesus comes back, when God comes, he's going to pour out his spirit on all flesh so that the young men dreams and the old men prophesy, right? So, you'll see when his second coming returns, you're going to see the world systems crash. And you're going to see people hunger for God in ways that they never hungered for him before. And it's only during that time that they'll be able to accept God for who he is because they've been rejecting him since the beginning of time. Okay, I want to point out something because, you know, the Jews believe that there are two types of messiahs. There's the Messiah ben David and the Messiah ben Joseph. Okay, remember that they rejected Jesus because they rejected the Father, right? So when we look at David, we can see from First Samuel, let's see, where am I? Right around verse 28. You know, this is where David was in the field and his father called him in to bring his brother's lunch who were on the battlefield. And he brings the lunch to him, and then he hears about Goliath, and I'll just start reading from here, okay? When Eliab, David's oldest brother, heard him speaking with the men, he burned with anger at him and asked, Why have you come down here? And with whom did you leave those few sheep in the wilderness? I know how conceited you are and how wicked your heart is. You came down only to watch the battle. And David's response is, now what have I done? Can't I even speak? He then turned away to someone else and brought up the same matter. See, David wasn't able to be who he was because people around him were just projecting so much onto him. His family, those who were supposed to be his gates of protection to the world, instead they were like a prison keeping him bound and not letting him come up. He was anointed as king, and yet they wouldn't embrace that identity. They kept him bound in servitude, and they justified it by calling him evil. And it's the same thing that happened with Jesus, really. They hated him because he was like God. So, and this was before they knew he was God. They just hated him. It was the revelation that he carried. It was the spirit that was upon him. They hated the competition, and part of the reason why they hated is because to be in the presence, you're forced to bow. The presence brings judgment, and if you're afraid of judgment, then you're going to reject the one who carries the judgment of God. Even though Jesus proved that God wasn't coming to destroy us all at that point. He was coming to save us and to forgive us and lead us and teach us in better ways, because the enemy they're just so tricky. They have us thinking, that we can't be anything other than who they say that we are. They have us thinking that they're more powerful than they are, and they rule us by guilt. And it's real tricky, especially when you think of these things, when you can see the enemy for who they are, and you know that their ways are wrong, and you can call them on it. But calling them on it brings on like more abuse. Like it says in Proverbs 9:8, it says, he who corrects a mocker invites abuse. There's something to that effect, right? I'm paraphrasing. But the enemy, that's all they do is mock. They will mock you if you're good. They'll mock you if you're bad. Their mocking is a way of inserting their superiority over you, because they wanna be masters. They don't want to be partners with anybody. They don't want to be a king taking care of their people. They want to be a master with a whole bunch of servants. And so they have a way of keeping their role going. So the scripture that I brought before you the other day was Matthew 5, right around verse 38, where, he said, you have heard it said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, but I tell you, do not resist an evil person. He's saying, don't resist them, because there's no justice there. When we say that the punishment shifted to crime, these people will hit you, and then when you hit them back, they'll hit you back 7 times more, and they'll keep on hitting you until you die, because you stood up to challenge them, and their master, not king, not ruler, not good father, their master, your slave, and they don't see you as having any right to challenge them, right? So Jesus says, if anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to them the other cheek also. And if anyone wants to sue you and take your shirt, hand over your coat as well. If anyone forces you to go one mile, go with them too. Give the one who asks you, and do not turn away from the one who wants to borrow from you. Okay, so Jesus isn't telling us to be punks, and this is real important that we understand this. That we don't do these things out of fear. Right? We have to really challenge our motivations, because if we're allowing God to lead us, then we trust in Him that He's in charge of fighting the battle, and He is a good Father, and He has your back, and He has a promise of Abraham on your life, that He will bless those who bless you, He will curse those who curse you. So you have to let Him fight the battle and take up His vengeance and keep your peace. He's telling you, don't be a punk, but do it out of love. Do it out of your strength, because you know that your life is not in their hands. You know that there's nothing they can do to you unless the Father allows it, right? So He's saying, don't be a punk, but do these things. Change your motivation, because God is strong, God is loving, and You know, the devil can argue a whole lot of things, but he can't argue with love and forgiveness. That is one thing that sets him running faster than anything in this world, because he doesn't know how to handle anything that he doesn't steal, you know, because he doesn't know how to control it, you know. And all he wants to do is dominate. So if you bless him, you take his control away, which is why Jesus says, bless those who curse you, right? So it's real important to understand how we're to be motivated, you know, because the Father is a good Father, and He will uphold you and protect you, you know. He will guide you away from these people, but you have to trust Him to do it, right? Okay, so we're talking about authority here, right? Understanding that God is the one of authority. And these people, they're so tricky. They're so tricky. And they'll tempt you saying, what, are you scared? Are you chicken? You know, they'll twist things around so much. And so you have to learn how to talk to them. And Jesus here in Mark 11:29, he gives us a real prime example of how to deal with people, you know. They were asking him, and who gave you the authority to do this? And Jesus replied, I will ask you one question. Answer me, and I will tell you by what authority I am doing these things. John's baptism, was it from heaven or of human origin? They discussed it, they plotted amongst themselves and said, if we say from heaven, he will ask them, why didn't you believe him? But if we say of human origin, they feared the people, for everyone held that John really was a prophet. So they answered Jesus, we don't know. And Jesus said, neither will I tell you by what authority I am doing these things. You see, they're going to try and find out who you are and what motivates you. They're going to have all kinds of questions for you. But the Spirit gives you discernment to see who they are when they're coming, you know. You get to know these people. They have a way. They have a way. And you have to be mindful of their way, because all they're coming to do is to trap and enslave you. So if you can keep yourself out of the snare, then you may be able to delay your cross a little longer, you know? Because the one who endures to the end is the one that gets the blessing, right? I'm not saying that Jesus won't come and raise you up. You know, the dead are supposed to rise first. But the ultimate goal is endurance. So what we're to do is to avoid getting pegged down, which is something that God actually did. He avoided getting pegged down by the enemy, which is why no one really has a clear definition of who God is in this world, who doesn't have a relationship with him. And those people who have a relationship aren't as boisterous as the people who don't know him and are out there cursing people, saying, that's not God, that's not God, that's not God. They have no idea who God is, and that's a real problem. So understanding that we're created in his image to be a reflection of him, you know, we can't do that if we don't know who he is. So don't believe anybody who tells you that you can only know him by knowing what he's not. That's nonsense. We can know him by seeing how he fights, his patience, you know, how he stands by you, he's loyal, you know, how he forgives you no matter what you've done. He's kind, he's our provider. You know, the Old Testament, it gives us 12 names for him, and those 12 names that are in there are actually descriptors of his character, you know. He's our victory banner. He's our God, mighty in battle, you know. He's our healer. He's our Jehovah Rapha, right? He's our all-sufficient one. He's our El Shaddai, you know. There is God and there is none above him. So you got to be real careful of getting pinned down into corners. And I just wanted to bring this before you because lies out there, right? I was thinking on it, and I think it's easier if we know who he is, because if we don't, we'll take up defensive positions like David did. Now what did I do? You know, don't open yourself up to criticism from the enemy, but just stand firm in the faith of people have their own issues, and don't make them your issues. You know, stand firm in the faith that you are a child of the Most High God, and He loves you, you know? So that's what I got for y'all today. God bless.